Chapter 7. Ashoka, the emperor who gave up war. Russian's rupees. Russian clutches the crisp notes that her grandfather had given her on her birthday. While she badly wanted to buy a new CD, she also wanted to just see and feel the brand new notes. It was then that she noticed that all of them had a smiling face of Gandhiji printed on the right, and a tiny set of lions on the left. What were the lions? Therefore, she wondered. A very big kingdom, an empire, the lion capital. The lions that we see on our notes and coins have a long history. They were carved in stones and placed on top of a massive stone pillar at Sarnath, about which you read in chapter 6. Ashoka was one of the greatest rulers known to history, and on his instruction inscriptions were inscribed on pillars as well as on rock surfaces. Before we find out what was written in these inscriptions, let us see why his kingdom was called an empire. The empire that Ashoka ruled was founded by his grandfather. Chandragupta Maurya, more than 2300 years ago. Chandragupta was supported by a wise man named Chanakya or Kautilya. Many of Chanakya's ideas were written down in a book called the Arthashastra. Dynasty. When members of the same family become rulers one after another, the family is often called a dynasty. The Mauryas were a dynasty with three important rulers: Chandragupta, his son Bindusara, and Bindusara's son Ashoka. The places where inscriptions of Ashoka have been found are marked with red dots. These were included within the empire. Name the countries where Ashokan inscriptions have been found. Which Indian states were outside the empire? There were several cities in the empire marked with black dots on the map. This included the capital Pataliputra, Taxila, and Ujjain. Taxila was a gateway to the northwest, including Central Asia, while Ujjain lay on the route from north to south India. Merchants, officials, and craftspersons probably lived in these cities. In other areas, there were villages of farmers and herders. In some areas, such as central India, there were forests where people gathered forest produce and hunted animals for food. People in different parts of the empire spoke different. Map 5. The Mauryan Empire, showing the principal cities and some of the places where inscriptions were found: Lampaka, Kandahar, Mansehra, Savajgari, Taxila, Kalsi, Topra, Beirut, Bahapur, Delhi, Lumbini, Rampura, Allahabad, Lauria, Ararach, Pataliputra, Sarnath, Kaushambi, Gujara, Rupnath, Sachi, Panguraria, Ujjain, Girnar, Kalingo, Dhauli, Jogara, Sanathi, Sopara, Maski, Iraguri, Brahmagiri, Arabian Sea, Bay of Bengal, Lakshadweep, Andaman and Nicobar Island. Index inscriptions were found: red dot, black dot, important cities. Sketch map not to scale. Languages, they probably ate different kinds of food and or different kinds of clothes as well. How are empires different from kingdoms? Emperors need more resources than kings because emperors are larger than kingdoms and need to be protected by big armies. So also they need a larger number of officials who collect taxes. Ruling the empire. As the empire was so large, different parts were ruled differently. The area around Pataliputra was under the direct control of the emperor. This meant that officials were appointed to collect taxes from farmers, herders, craftspersons, and traders who lived in villages and towns in the area. Officials also punished those who disobeyed the ruler's orders. Many of these officials were given salaries. Messengers went to and fro, and spies kept watch on the official. And of course, the emperor supervised them all with the help of members of the royal family and senior ministers. There were other areas or provinces. Each of these was ruled from a provincial capital such as Taxila or Ujjain. Although there was some amount of control from Pataliputra, and royal princes were often sent as governor, local customs and rules were probably followed. Besides, there were vast areas between these centers. Here the Mauchos tried to control roads and rivers, which were important for transport and to collect whatever resources were available as tax and tribute. For example, the Arthashastra tells us that the northwest was important for blankets and South India for its gold and precious stones. It is possible that these resources were collected as tribute. Tribute. Unlike taxes, which were collected on a regular basis, tribute was collected as and when it was possible from people who gave a variety of things more or less willingly. There were also the forested regions. People living in these areas were more or less independent, but may have been expected to provide elephants, timber, honey, and works to Mauryan officers. The emperor and the capital city. Megasthenes was an ambassador who was sent to the court of Chandragupta by the Greek ruler of West Asia named Seleucus Nicator. Megasthenes wrote an account about what he saw. Here is a part of his description. The occasions on which the emperor appears in public are celebrated with grand royal processions. He is carried in a golden palanquin. His guards ride elephants decorated with gold and silver. Some of the guards carry trees on which live birds, including a flock of trained parrots, circle above the head of the emperor. The king is normally surrounded by armed women. He is afraid that someone may try to kill him. He has special servants to taste the food before he eats. He never sleeps in the same bedroom for 2 nights. And about Pataliputra, modern Patna, he wrote, "This is a large and beautiful city. It is surrounded by a massive wall. It has 570 towers and 64 courts. The houses of 2 and 3 stories are built of woods and mud brick. The king's palace is also of wood and decorated with stone carving. It is surrounded with gardens and enclosures for keeping birds." Why do you think the king had special servants to taste the food he ate? In what ways was Pataliputra different from Mohenjo-daro? Hint, see chapter 3. Comment this. Ashoka, a unique ruler. The most famous Mauryan ruler was Ashoka. He was the first ruler who tried to take his message to the people through inscription. Most of Ashoka's inscriptions were in Prakrit and were written in the Brahmi script. Ashoka's were in Kalinga. Kalinga is the ancient name of coastal Odisha. See map page 68. Ashoka fought a war to conquer Kalinga. However, he was so horrified when he saw the violence and bloodshed that he decided not to fight any more wars. He is the only king in the history of the world who gave up conquest after winning a war. Ashoka's inscription describing the Kalinga War. This is what Ashoka declared in one of his inscriptions. 8 years after becoming king, I conquered Kalinga. About a lakh and a half people were captured and more than a lakh of people were killed. That filled me with sorrow. Why? Whenever an independent land is conquered, lakh of people die and many are taken prisoners. Brahmins and monks also die. People who are kind to their relatives and friends, to their slaves and servants die or lose their loved ones. That is why I am sad and have decided to observe Dhamma and to teach others about it as well. I believe that winning people over through Dhamma is much better than conquering them through force. I am inscribing this message for the future so that my son and grandson after me should not think about war. Instead, they should try to think about how to spread Dhamma. How did the Kalinga War bring about a change in Ashoka's attitude towards war? Comment this. Dhamma is Prakrit word for the Sanskrit term dharma. What was Ashoka's Dhamma? Ashoka's Dhamma did not involve worship of a god or performance of a sacrifice. He felt that, just as a father tries to teach his children, he had a duty to instruct his subject. He was also inspired by the teaching of the Buddha chapter 6. There were a number of problems that troubled him. People in the empire followed different religions and this sometimes led to conflict. Animals were sacrificed. Slaves and servants were ill-treated. Besides, there were quarrels in families and amongst neighbors. Ashoka felt it was his duty to solve these problems. So he appointed officials, known as the Dhamma Mahamatta, who went from place to place teaching people about Dhamma. Besides, Ashoka got his messages inscribed on rocks and pillars, instructing his officials to read his message to those who could not read in it themselves. The Rampura bull. Look at this finely polished stone sculpture. This was part of a Mauryan pillar found in Rampura, Bihar, and has now been placed in Rashtrapati Bhavan. It is an example of the skill of the sculpture of the time. Ashoka also sent messengers to spread ideas about Dhamma to other lands, such as Syria, Egypt, Greece, and Sri Lanka. Try and identify this on map 6, page 76 to 77. He built roads, dug wells, and built rest houses. Besides, he arranged for medical treatment for both human beings and animals. Ashoka's messages to his subjects. People perform a variety of rituals when they fall ill, when their children get married, when children are born, or when they go on a journey. These rituals are not useful. If instead people observe other practices, these would be more fruitful. What are these other practices? These are being gentle with slaves and servants, respecting one's elders, treating all creatures with compassion, giving gift to Brahmins and monks. It is both wrong to praise one's own religion or criticize another's. Each one should respect the other's religion. If one praises one's own religion while criticizing another's, one is actually doing greater harm to one's own religion. Therefore, one should try to understand the main ideas of another religion and respect it. Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru, the first Prime Minister of India, wrote his edict instruction to still speak to us in a language we can understand and we can still learn much from them. Identify the parts of Ashoka's message that you think are relevant today. Below, the Brahmi script. Most modern Indian scripts have developed from the Brahmi script over hundred of years. Here we can see the letter A written in different script. Early Brahmi, Devanagari Hindi, Bengali, Malayalam, Tamil. Elsewhere, Somewhat before the time of the Mauryan Empire, about 2400 years ago, emperors in China began building the Great Wall. It was meant to protect the northern frontier of the empire from pastoral people. Additions to the wall were made over a period of 2000 years because the frontiers of the empire kept shifting. The wall is about 6,400 kilometers long and is made of stone and brick with a road along the top. Several thousand people worked to build the wall. There are watchtowers along at distances of about 100 to 200 meters. In what ways do you think Ashoka's attitude towards neighboring peoples was different from that of Chinese emperors? Comment this. Imagine you live in Kalinga and your parents have suffered in the war. Messengers from Ashoka have just arrived with the new ideas about Dhamma. Describe the dialogue between them and your parents. Do this. Let's recall. Comment this. Keywords: empire, capital, province, Dhamma, messenger, official. Let's discuss. Comment this. Some important dates. Beginning of the Mauryan Empire more than 2300 years ago. Let's do. Comment this. Map 6. Showing important trade routes including the Silk Route. Trade route with Baltic, Ardanipur, Karnantam, Aquileia, Beminasiam, Tomi, River Danube, Rome, Roman Empire, Greek trade with South Russia, Mediterranean Sea, Mytilene, Sardis, Ephesus, Miletus, Byzantium, Black Sea, River Don, River Volga, River Kama, River Ural, River Jaxartes, Aral Sea, River Oxus, Kushan, Marv, Bactria, Herat, Kapisa, Barchan Samarkand, thus Kushan, Caspian Sea, Hecatompylos, Persia, Kerman, Bakra, Urmus, Socotra, Kingdom of Aksum, Adulis, Ghana, Arabia, Omana, Gera, Apologos, River Euphrates, Gulf, Persian Gulf, Persepolis, Charax, Sasa, Ecbatana, Ctesiphon, Dura Europos, Nisibis, River Tigris, Edessa, Caucasus Emptius, Trapezus, Trebizond, Black Sea, Zogma, Antioch, Palmyra, Damascus, Tyre, Gaza, Petra, Elena, Seleucia, Red Sea, Lusicum, Berenice, Myos Hormuz, Slisma, Alexandria, Damascus, Antioch, Mediterranean Sea, these Deep brown, this brown color, these routes were under the control of Chinese ruler. Green color, these routes were under the control of the Kushanas, chapter 9. Yellow color, these were important sea routes. Red color, these routes were under the control of the rulers of Iran, Persia. Pink color, these routes were controlled by the Roman Empire. Mongolia, El Balkhas, Tuzungaria, Turfan, River Lily, Ferghana, Kokand, Esakul, Tianshan, Xinjiang, Taklamakan Desert, Kesgar, Yarkand, Lupnar, Khotan, Tunhuang, Turfan, Anhasi, Nansan, Loyang, Lanzhou, Kangsu, China, Chengdu, River Yangtze, Fanyu, Chhattisgarh, Badapura, Osi, Patani, Takola, probably Chinese roots, Bay of Bengal, the Provani, Indian Ocean, Arabian Sea, Mujuris, Sopatma Puduka, Musulipattam, Braigaza, Broch, India, River Ganges, Pataliputra. Himalayas mountains, Tibet, Lhasa, Kunian range, Pamir mountain, Jarifsa, Bactra, Begram, Hindu Kush, Kabul, Peshawar, Taxila, Empire, Patala, River Indus, Barbaricum, Arabian Sea, Bay of Bengal, Indian Ocean. Chinese, Indian, Iranian, Arab, Greek, and Roman traders participated in these exchanges. The ports along the coast of South India were important centers for the export of pepper and other spices. Find Paducah, South India on the map. This was the Roman name for Adikamedu, chapter 8. Based on the Times Atlas of World History and Jeffrey Burklow, Hammond Incorporation, New Jersey, 1996, page 70 to 71. Looking ahead, the Mauryan Empire collapsed about 2200 years ago. In its place and elsewhere rose several new kingdoms in the northwest and in parts of North India. Kings known as the Indo-Greeks ruled for about 100 years. They were followed by a Central Asian people known as the Shakkas, who set up kingdoms in the northwest, north, and western India. Some of these kingdoms lasted for about 500 years till the Shakkas were defeated by the Gupta kings. Chapter 10. The Shakkas in turn were followed by the Kushanas about 2000 years ago. You will learn more about the Kushanas in chapter 9. An Indo-Greek coin. A Kushana coin. In the north and in parts of central India, a general of the Mauryas named Pushyamitra Shunga set up a kingdom. The Shungas were followed by another dynasty known as the Kanvas and by rulers from other families till the establishment of the Gupta Empire about 1700 years ago. The Shakkas, who ruled over parts of western India, fought several battles with the Satavahanas, who ruled over western and parts of central India. The Satavahana kingdom, which was established about 2100 years ago, lasted for about 400 years around 1700 years ago, a new ruling family known as the Bhaktakas became powerful in central and western India. In South India, the Cholas, Cheras, and Pandyas ruled between 2200 and 1800 years ago, and about 1500 years ago, there were two large kingdoms, those of the Pallavas and the Chalukyas. There were several other kingdoms and kings as well. We know about them from their coins and inscriptions as well as from books. There were other changes that were taking place in which ordinary men and women played a major role. This included the spread of agriculture and the growth of new towns, crop production, and trade. Traders explored land routes within the subcontinent and outside, and sea routes to West Asia, East Africa, and Southeast Asia. Synapses were also opened up and many new buildings were built, including the earliest temples and stupas. Books were written and scientific discoveries were made. These developments took place simultaneously. That is, at the same time, keep this in mind as you read the rest of the book. A Shaka coin, a Shadbahana coin.